everyone, and welcome to our 20th episode of Gargoyles Reawakening. I'm Lisa, known as Talia Levid online. I'm joined by the lovely Karel, known as Coda Leia,
Morning, everyone.
and also the delightful Greg Basansky, known as Greg XB online.
Bashansky, but that's the kid that happens all the time.
No, I knew I was going to do that too. Like the mic kind of. I know. Sorry.
No, it's all right. It's all right. How's everyone doing?
We're
Great.
good.
How are you?
Can't complain.
It has been about 10 months since we've done our last show, so we're grateful that you're joining us. We do have some news, gargoyle news as well, but Karel and I kind of have some bigger news. I don't know if Karel wants to say it or I do.
Yeah.
But after a lot of consideration, Karel and I, we just have a lot of things going on right now. And we did decide that this would be our last show. It's kind of emotional, truthfully. I mean, we've been doing it since 2012, and it was a really big decision. We just, like I said, we've had a lot going on. I'm still dealing a lot with my health stuff. I have appointments weekly. I have a full-time job. I have a full-time kiddo. I know Karel has full-time work too.
Mm-hmm.
But
it was more difficult, like, to find time to record and everything, and this is why we have like some hiatus, like a 1 year long sometimes.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I guess you have to know when it's your time to draw back.
Right. And what we mostly want to do is, definitely encourage others to take the reins. We never thought we would really last this long, to be honest with you. And to get to episode 20 to us is just monumental. I don't know. I have so many good memories. Where to even start? But yeah, mostly what we really want to get across is, if you've had that idea that you want to start your own podcast, you want to do something to keep the fandom alive, do it. This podcast started with an idea from Karel. And we were talking about what we wanted to make the group. I remember these conversations. And we just weren't sure which direction to go. And Karel was like, what about a podcast? And we were like, ew, our voices on the internet. Nobody wants to hear that. And here we are, 6 years later. It's incredible.
And I think that, we had like make a table of contest with ideas and people to interview, and we didn't even scratch the surface.
We didn't even scratch the surface of
it. There are so many things to talk about and so many people to talk to that.
Yeah, and there are so many people who have there's almost been like a little revival of the fandom recently, and it's been very cool to see that. It seems like with Gargoyles we go in spurts. It seems like sometimes we just have that nice lull, and there's still the hardcore fans who are like, we're going to do this to keep it together. And I'm not saying anyone's not a hardcore fan. I don't want that to come across. But then something exciting will come up, and more will get involved, and suddenly it sparks this whole new generation of fan fiction and fan art. You get people who maybe didn't want to be known in the fandom. Suddenly they're coming out of the woodwork, and they're making their statements, and they're becoming known, and it's really great to see that.
Agreed.
And I do think part of the revival is, we were going to talk about the Funko Pops, and I think that's really encouraged people to step forward too, because suddenly it gives you these things to collect again. For a while it was back in the 90s, we had all the toys, and some of them are really awesome, and some of them have no neck, Brooklyn. And then, in the early 2000s, we finally started to get our video release. And I don't even want to say early 2000s, like mid 2000s, we started to get our DVD releases, and that brought about the fandom again. And now I think it really does come down to those Funko Pops, and that's really seemed to draw people. I don't know if you guys agree with that or not.
Yeah, I think every time that there is something from the official fandom merchandising, like the thing is running on again. So
yeah.
It's a small thing, but a notable thing. I've also noticed there's a lot more Gargoyles reviews out there and Gargoyles articles from various
Yeah.
peak fan sites lately. So I don't know
Mhm.
if that means anything else is on the horizon, but it's encouraging. It's nice to see.
It's very encouraging, especially when you see like directors like Jordan Peele who are kind of
Yeah.
going to bat. Yeah. So I don't know what strings he can pull or if anything will ever come out of that, but more power to you, man. I would see the movie 12 times, if not more. So
Well, I do know one thing I've noticed recently, and I don't want everyone running around with this as a rumor or anything. It doesn't necessarily mean anything, but Jordan Peele there just started following Greg Weisman on Twitter.
Oh.
Ooh, there we go.
And there's another thing that I'm waiting for, like the new streaming platform, like Disney Plus.
Disney Plus.
Because,
Yeah.
well, they are all talking about Disney Plus and the launching of the platform. And maybe, if they have like the idea of like streaming Gargoyles in their catalog, that would be just awesome. Like it would be another way to watch it again and to attract new people to it.
Hashtag keep binging Gargoyles. It worked for Young Justice.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that show finally came back for a third season, which so far is terrific, I have to say.
It's not here in France yet, and I'm so disappointed.
Oh, Carell.
I just waited for the third season of Young Justice, and it's
It is so good.
Yeah, I know it is. I'm sure it is. So yeah, what we wanted to say is that when we started with this podcast, we didn't know what we were doing. We just rolling with it, and it's not really complicated. It's just that we only paid for the website. We didn't. You can find like the recorder that I'm using is free online, and everything else is almost free. And you just have to know your stuff maybe in Adobe Premiere or another like editing program, but it's not very complicated to do. So I think like if I did it, to be honest, anyone could.
And that's just it. None of us had a like podcast experience when we started.
No, never.
So no. So there you go, guys. Don't use that as your excuse.
When I first started Spectacular Radio, a friend of mine who also podcast had to drive up to my house to teach me how to edit.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's super cool too. So
Yeah,
see,
and-
sometimes you have those friends who know how to do the things that maybe you don't quite know. So that's perfect too.
And to be honest, if there are some people who want to take like to make their own podcast, they can come to me and ask me for advices or some. Yeah, they totally can do that. And to be honest, on YouTube you have everything you need.
Yeah, Carell has been our editing guru. I have bowed in her name before because she always makes the show sound so streamlined. You would never know how much stuff she actually cuts out of the show.
Yeah, all my and all my hesitation.
Right. I know. She told me once she makes like these little marks at the minute line or the second line, and she'll go back and she'll just chop it out, and you would never know it. It's amazing. So yeah, if you
But it guys
works. Have any questions, reach out to Carell.
Yeah, definitely.
I have the easy job. I just talk. But yeah, let's kind of segue into the Funko Pops maybe. Would that be a good place to start?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. So these have been released intermittently for about, I would say, the last year and a half?
I think they came out in August originally.
Yeah, they came out in summer, I think.
Yep. And the most recent was the Angela release on Black Friday. And you could get, the regular Angela, which I had to buy mine on eBay. I'm sorry, guys. I didn't get to GameStop.
So did I.
Yeah. And then we did buy a Stone Angela from eBay, and my son has commandeered her in his room. So she's not with my collection right now, but she will be, I'm hoping, one day.
I also think it's worth pointing out that that's the first piece of Angela merchandise ever.
Right. It really is. I remember somebody had made like a custom Angela from a Demona figure. It's definitely nothing like the Anthony's Creations, like you special order. And that was the first Angela thing I had truly ever seen.
Do you have the regular one and the stone version?
For the Funko Pops?
Yeah,
Yes.
for the Funko Pop.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yep. I have the regular Angela in my collection. I have them all on a bookshelf underneath a piece of Brooklyn fan art that I purchased a while ago. And then we have the stone one, but like I said, Bennett kind of took it up to his room. So it's hanging out in there for now. But he's very interested in the show, so he's going to help me lead the next generation of Gargoyle fans. I feel it.
Good.
Yep.
Though on a little down note, I would say I purchased the stone version Demona on sale. It cost me half the price. But when I received it, I was kind of maybe disappointed. I wish that the figure had crackles or something, you know. I felt like it was like, you know, it's plain gray.
Yes.
And I felt like it's like the
Cheap.
yeah, like, you know, when they're melting plastic to do the thing, it's like gray and they paint over it, and I felt like it was like the regular mold out of the mold thing,
and they just put gray paint in there. Yeah.
I felt like this is why this is the only stone version that I have of the collection. I have the whole clan minus the Angela one, because we don't have this in Europe, and I think I would have stole a kidney to or sold a kidney to buy it. But I was kind of disappointed when I had this stone version. I think they could have pushed it a little bit more.
I agree. I mean, I'll be the first to admit, I'm not really, as a whole, a big fan of Funko Pops. They're just not really my thing.
I'm not either.
But I did buy all of these.
Yeah, me too.
Me too. I know. I say that too. Like, I have some at my desk, and everybody thinks I'm this huge Funko Pop fan. I'm like, no, I'm not. But I wanted to support, and I want them to make more, because there are so many characters that they could create, and hopefully they still do. I would love an Elisa one. I would love a Xanatos one. The pack would be awesome. I don't know. But yeah, there's just so many that they could create, and I'm hoping that they'll continue the line with the Gargoyle ones. But also, admittedly, the stone ones are probably my least favorite out of the grouping.
Agreed.
And to be honest, in the 90s, I never had the opportunity to buy the toys. So it was my first time that I could collect a real figurine from Gargoyles. So it was kind of special to me too, because I had the whole clan. I was like, oh, it's the first figurine that I have. Oh gosh.
No, that's wonderful. And I do think that's part of the revival too, is that, you know, people who weren't born in the 90s, or people who didn't have the access that we did in the 90s, are able to get these Funko Pops. Like I said, I'm really hoping they continue the line, because there are a lot of characters I really want them to create still.
Oh, same. I'm not sure I'd go as far as to call it a revival, but hopefully there'll be other things that come along with this. It's definitely generating a little bit of interest, so we just need to generate a lot more interest in order to really have a revival.
Right.
I wish that we would be able to have the sale numbers one day, just to know if it's okay.
Oh, they'll never release those. These companies don't release their sales numbers.
Well, I guess that if one day we have Xanatos and Demona, it means that it's sold well, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I rarely see them ever in stores. I mean, sometimes I see them, but not often.
No, and if I do, it's always the same couple. It's not like a huge quantity of the different characters. In our Barnes and Noble, we have quite a few Broadways. But other than that, you can't find Brooklyn, you can't find Lexington, you can't find any of the others. Hudson is like the mythical unicorn. Yeah, and Angela, I only found her on eBay. I couldn't find her anywhere else, even in the GameStops around here.
I seem to recall Hudson being some kind of exclusive.
Right, I think he was.
I know that my sister found 6 of them in the geek store next to her place, and she bought them for me. And then I went to Paris in another geek store to buy, there were 2 of them. I didn't have Lexington at that time.
Okay.
And then I bought Lexington online, and then I bought the stone version Demona on sale online. So it's been like 4 different places to buy them. And like last week I went to like a local mall nearby, and there was a geek store that I didn't know it existed. And they had a little Bronx, but as you say, they had like only one of them, and they had only Bronx. They had a couple of Bronxes.
Yep. And I do know they did do exclusives at different stores. Like I know Hot Topic got a few. I know that like FYE got a couple exclusives. I'm trying to think. I know GameStop, of course. And gosh, I want to say like Target had the Stone Goliath. Was that the only place?
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say Target was the only place I found Stone Goliath. I think he was an exclusive there.
And do you have the keychains too?
Yeah, I have the Goliath and I have the Demona keychain.
Yeah, I do. Yep, okay. I have Goliath and Demona, and then I have one of the stone Demonas too.
I will need to buy another Demona because I used that one for my actual keychain. Let me tell you, a lot of paint rub.
Oh, I believe it.
This is why I didn't put them out of their cardboard. It's all packed.
I took them all out. They're on my TV stand right now. Although Demona is not hanging out with the rest of the clan because she's a shithead.
Yeah, Bennett has his lined up on his nightstand upstairs. His are out of the boxes. Mine I have still in the boxes downstairs. So yeah, I guess it's just personal preference there.
Yeah, it's the only Pop Funko I have that are still in their packages. I don't know why.
I've never been a mitten box kind of guy, but that's just me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, either all the other Pop Funko I have, I pop them out of the package, but those one I didn't dare to open it.
Yeah, Bennett was like, "Let me open these up," and he no sooner got them and he had them opened up and he lined them up on his little nightstand. So that's where his hangout.
Nice.
Yep. I suppose that's a good time. I actually am excited to say that I watched Awakening with my son the other week. It was super exciting. I told Carell and Greg that I felt like it was like the defining moment of parenthood. I was finally able to kind of sit down and watch it with him, and we had a good time. And then he wanted to watch, the Avalon series so he could see where Angela came in. And we watched The Gathering so he could see when Angela came to Manhattan. So we got to see kind of that full run. But it was really cool. He just came up to me one night and he asked if we could watch it. And I was like, yeah, that's fine.
You've been waiting for that, haven't you?
I have been waiting for this moment. And, I'm not a prudish parent. I'm not one of those parents who are like, oh, you can't watch this. But I'm like, I wanted it to be the right time where I felt that some of the themes would catch on and where we could talk about it. And it was great. He would ask questions and I would explain things. We did talk a little bit about Shakespeare without going too much into it, with Puck. But yeah, even with The Awakening, he just sat there and he was just enchanted. He only asked me a couple questions during the episode, and then sometimes we'd have to pause it. But if I tried to talk during the show, he was like, "Shh, Mom, shh."
Nice. So, I like hearing that. I love hearing that.
Oh, it was phenomenal. I don't want to say it's like, one of the prized memories of our lives, but it's definitely something that I'll take with me for a very, very long time, if not forever. So
again, that is something like any Gargoyles fan that is a parent is waiting to do one day. I hope that one day it will happen to me. So it's the magic of transmission of your passion. So
yeah, yep. And now he's really into the Funko Pops because we watched the show. He'll ask if he can play with my action figures from the 90s, and those are not in boxes, they're just in a bin. And I'm like, yep, go ahead, take them out. So he'll play little adventures with them. I have a Gargoyles puzzle cube, and that's now on his nightstand. It's where Lexington has to stand because Lexington is the shortest. Lexington is his favorite, he told me. So he's really into that right now.
That's so cute.
Don't show him Clarion and Young Justice then. that's
Yeah, I
Tom
don't think
Adcock's
I'm
being
ready for
evil.
that.
And Tom Adcock's some do evil.
Yeah, I think his first Tom Adcock's experience was like something on Sophia the First. He was like a voice on there, and I'm like, that's Lexington, and and he didn't get it at the time, but yeah, now he's
Where's Lexington?
yeah, right. He's just kind of like, whatever, mom, that's totally somebody else. But it was definitely his voice, and yeah. So then when we were watching Gargoyles, he told me that Lexington was his favorite.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's a little techie.
He is. He's very, very much into technology and wanting to check out what people are doing on like the computer and gaming and things. So yeah, there's a lot of similarities. He's kind of shy like Lexington, so I see that too. I think he kind of related with that a little bit. But yeah, it was like best parenting night ever. So now I just need to get his friends involved.
Yes, you do. Well, you were talking about revivals before. Hopefully, with Disney Plus coming out, hopefully it'll be on there. And like I said, we can have the Keep Binging Gargoyles tag on Twitter, and I have some plans to. I have some ideas on helping out with that, which I'll announce later in the podcast.
Oh yeah, and maybe that's something we can organize, like on Twitter and on the Facebook groups, just to organize people to send tweets and things to Disney Plus to make them move if they didn't think about Gargoyles in their catalog.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want the unedited versions. I don't want it to be the Toon Disney versions.
Oh yeah.
Right now, the only way to get those is DVD.
Right.
You know, I have to confess something. I've never actually watched the Toon Disney edits. I'm aware of them, but I've never watched them because when I heard about them, I said, no, I'm going to stick with my VHS copies taped from the TV. So I wore those out as over the years before the DVDs came out. It was really frustrating with season 2, volume 2.
Yeah, I never really watched a lot of the Toon Disney, usually because if it was on during a time when I wasn't able to watch it. But yeah, it was more like a thing I heard about were all the edits. And even when I was going through like the Garg Wiki, you know, if you look at some of the episode reviews, it'll even tell you about the Toon Disney edits. So yeah, it sounds like they really, really kind of hacked those. I don't know.
They did.
And
in big ways and in small ways. Tana is an expert on those edits. She could list all of them. She knows it all.
Does she?
Mm-hmm.
We should have just grilled her when we had her on the show. Like, hey, tell us about this edit.
She would have.
If only we had known.
We didn't. Indeed.
Nope. Maybe it's for the best. We probably would have walked away just angry. How could they do that to our show?
I don't think it's Pat the Atlantic because I didn't know that they did that. So I think that we have the unedited version in France.
Oh, awesome.
Do you actually see Oberon take the harpoon to the chest?
I don't remember, but it's possible.
All right. Okay, do you see Elisa lying in the pool of blood?
Yeah, we did.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, then you're fine. I think we could probably move into Age of Gargoyles.
Yeah, I just want to let you know for the 6 of you who are reading us, Age of Gargoyles is not dead. We just took a bit of a hiatus. I mean, like I said, I love Gargoyles with all my heart. Sometimes I need to put it down and go do something else. And the last fic that I wrote was Aftermath, which was my take on the Gargoyles' reaction to the attacks on September 11th. And that one emotionally drained me to the point where right after writing it, I needed to take a months and months long break.
Understandable.
But I'm really pleased with how that one came out, and I didn't sugarcoat it. It wasn't a very special episode. Damona didn't make nice with everybody, although she tried to use it as a propaganda tool at one point, because that's who she is. I mean, but I'm working on another fic right now. I've actually got 4 outlined right now, and one of my collaborators, Master Dramon, just finished his contribution, which was a fic called The Island, which takes place before my first fic does, where we see the birth of Talon and Maggie's child, and Severius is, of course, in the fic. It involves a trip to the island of Dr. Moreau, another literary reference. It was really good.
Right.
Is currently writing a fic called Assassins, which the first chapter is up right now. The Illuminati's attempt to assassinate Griff. My OC Tamara, who's a high-ranking member of the Illuminati, has made a cameo in that one already because since she's in charge of all affairs involving gargoyles, she had to kind of sign off on that idea. and then after that's done, Chip is going to be doing his multi-part big epic Grail quest, since he mostly handles Pendragon. So the Holy Grail is going to involve everyone to one extent or another. And my next fic, which is currently called Targets, takes place during the Grail quest. It's not there as an advertisement for his, although the surrounding story encourages you to go check that out. But we're going to be getting Fox's backstory. At least what I think Fox's backstory is.
That'll be interesting. I don't know if anyone's really touched on that before.
I know Greg says he knows what it is, didn't actually disclose it, so I had to think of what it is. I rewatched her interactions with her parents. We know she was a mercenary at one point, and I'm thinking, how does the daughter of a billionaire industrialist become a mercenary?
Right. Like what happened that brings you to that point, or even to have that desire?
Yeah, and after that, that wasn't going to be the next one. A fic called War Stories was going to be the next one, which is covering my take on Sherry's background via some flashback Sherry from the comic books. And people have been asking me for a long time, because after I did that one fic, I think it was the Burning Relief, people wanted to see more humans mutated with gargoyle DNA. Well, they're about to get that. Only I'm not giving it to them in the fan servicey ways they obviously wanted it. So be careful what you wish for. You're getting it. It's not going to be a good thing. Especially since Thalog is behind it.
I'm kind of excited for that one too, because I know that when you have like a twisted idea, don't take that as an offense, but when you have like a twisted idea, you write some of your best work. Like I think it's fun to see what you come up with creatively in that aspect.
Oh, thank you. I'm not taking it wrong at all. In fact, I often have a habit. Some people accuse me of being mean because of this, that I will take certain fan desires, the type of, when I say I'm talking about the wish fulfillment stuff that could never really happen in canon, and I twist them around to show people why this isn't really what you want. You think you want this, it's not. I mean, I will never turn Elisa into a gargoyle. Sorry, Mercenary X. So that's not going to happen. I will never. Damona's not going to reform from a hug from Angela, and oh god, I got a fic coming up about that later on too. So and after that, after I do War Stories, I'm doing Nevermore. It's a Halloween fic. There's a big subplot and a smaller subplot. Nevermore. It involves the return of Raven, the trickster, and it takes place on Halloween. So figuring out costumes for the cast of characters is always fun.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's also a subplot going on, because it's not just Raven. There's a subplot going on there as well that involves a new drug hitting the streets of Manhattan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm not afraid to go there. I'm really not. And then after that, it's a fic called The Fairy's Midwife / The Maiden, which brings back Damona in a big way. She's not playing a big part in the other fics that I mentioned, if she appears even in them at all, because even I sometimes have to give my muse there a break. You don't want to overuse one of your main villains. And she'll be teaming up with 2 other sorceresses. I'm not going to disclose who they are, but let's just say she's going to be part of a coven for a little while. And they have plans, schemes, and I know Algernon's writing another fic. I mean, he calls himself Dr. Alj on fanfiction.net now. He wanted something easier for people to spell. And he's doing some more Heroes of Ulster. He's doing a set during the Grail arc as well. And after all this, we're going to be doing our big Queen Mab story. And once that big Queen Mab story is done, it's going to be a long-running arc. We're probably gonna sit back and decide: do we do we still want to do this, or did we reach a good stopping point? We've got ideas post Mab, but you know,
Mm-hmm.
at some point, you want to decide whether or not you really want to keep doing this for another 5 years.
Right, right.
We've all promised each other that this is the point that we want to at least hit before we decide what's next, if
What's
anything.
next? And I know there's been like a lot of suspense built up about the Queen Mab arc too. Like we've seen almost teasers. We've seen a few pieces of fan art. We've seen, you know, a few little hints here and there. So I'm very excited for that arc.
Yeah, Mab has a small cameo at the end of the fic that I wrote with the Whip of Mab.
Okay.
Yeah, that was sort of my way of building up to it slowly, like the Mirror introduced the third race slowly. I mean, you don't bring Queen Mab out at once. I mean, we've got a Mab cult over in Heroes of Ulster led by a character called Maeve, which Algernon is writing, and we've mentioned Mab here and there, sprinkling in little hints, and the hints are getting thicker and thicker and thicker. And I think our take on Queen Mab is going to be really cool. I mean, I went back and reread some. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to say this on the air because it would just be rude. I was going to say I went back and reread TGS's Unseelie War arc to see where it went wrong and how not to repeat that stuff. But that's rude. Don't put that in there.
We'll edit that.
For starters, it's not going to end with just a broken arm and new clan members. There's going to actually be a price to all this.
Sure. Which I feel is more true to the Gargoyles fandom and like as close to canon as you can get, because I always feel there's a lesson. It's not in your face, but there's always a lesson and there's consequences to actions.
There has to be, and the Mab our Mab arc it's going to be basically a war. War has costs, and the cost has to be painful. I'm not going to reveal what that cost or costs plural might be, but
they're there.
They're our heroes. If they survive, won't survive unscathed. And I think that's all I have to say about that for the time being.
No, thank you. And thank you for letting us in. I know that that you've been working very hard with these other gentlemen. And I know people are really anticipating, like I said, especially the Queen Mab, because we've had teasers for it. But I do want to say, you know, if you haven't read any of Greg's fics or Chip's, or I don't want to say his name, Master
Draymond.
Master Draymond?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't want to say it wrong because I'm sure the way that I read it is different than how it's pronounced. But if you haven't read any of these stories, then I really encourage you to go and find them. And we can post the link on our site too.
Definitely. I'll send you a link.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
All right. And I have something else to announce, and I swear to God, before anyone thinks otherwise, this is not connected with this being the last episode of Gargoyles Reawakening. As you know, I host Spectacular Radio, a podcast that's coming to an end soon. We've got 6 episodes left to cover. We're doing a new Gargoyles podcast after that's over.
Yay!
Yay! No, we're excited for you.
We are.
Yeah, it's called Voices from the Eerie. The original idea was we would do that, and then we would have a fan reaction to each episode right after that, like I do with Spectacular Radio. And while I'm still thinking of doing that, I've recently been listening to the Whelmed podcast, which is a Young Justice podcast. And I'm thinking about stealing some ideas from there because they do a lot of interesting things. They had an entire podcast at one point dedicated to the linguistics of the show, just character dialogue and what that says about them, and things like that are so interesting that I'm thinking I want to swipe ideas like that.
I think you should. I think that was one of the things we had talked about for our show. We were going to talk about like the different language, and also we were going to talk about like the different cultures incorporated, the different myths. And I know we scratched the surface, but barely. So it would be fantastic to see some in-depth review on those topics.
Definitely. I'm interested.
Me too.
That's currently planned. The idea is to have episode 0 out in October to coincide with the 25th anniversary of the series.
Oh, yeah.
And from that point forward, then after we do episode 0, the podcast itself will pick up after Spectacular Radio is over, which I know you understand.
Yes. From the bottom of our hearts, we totally understand that.
But we're definitely going to have the first show out this year. And then next year, we're also hoping to generate some hype with this, especially if Disney Plus
Mhm.
hosts Gargoyles and helps generate interest in this. So we have this as a companion piece as well. I mean, it's I don't know how likely this will work, but it's kind of a scheme to continue generating interest.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think that's exactly what we need.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we're hoping to have interviews. I don't know how possible it is, but it'd be great to have, say, Keith David, Jeff Bennett, Marina Sirtis, etc. on at one point. I can't promise that, but
But that would be awesome.
But it's a wish list. We had that as our wish list.
Yeah, we
I'm
had a
positive
long
we
wish
did.
list too.
yeah, it's a wish list. I mean, just want to say to everyone, none of this is a promise. This is just what I'm hoping to accomplish.
Right.
You're going to do the Awakening all over again?
Yes. Yeah, so I have to do Awakening again. I'm going to have to do City of Stone again, and eventually, but we're going to go one episode at a time. We plan to cover all the comic books. At present, we're not planning to cover the Goliath Chronicles. I mean, I'm sure when we get to the journey and we discuss the TV version versus the comic version, we'll talk about the Goliath Chronicles a little bit, but
Right.
but no, right now you couldn't pay me to watch those episodes again.
I think, not to compare, I think we did something very similar where we were like, okay, people are asking for the Goliath Chronicles. We're not really going to talk about it. We'll talk about to this point. And then we did have something where we kind of discussed some of the differences, and that was about it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if we went into a Goliath Chronicles show, it'd be too mean-spirited.
Yeah. And that's what we said too, is we just had nothing really positive to say other than we love the voice actors for being so dedicated.
That's all you can say.
Mm-hmm. No, I think we sang their praises, and that was pretty much the end of it.
Yeah. And the thing is also, like Greg Wiseman, I have not seen those episodes since they originally aired. So every now and then I'll see a screenshot, like, where's that from, huh? And then, that has to be Goliath Chronicles. Never mind. Especially if Elisa's jacket is faded for some reason.
Right. In Goliath Chronicles, Elisa washed her leather jacket. We don't know why. But yeah, no, I am very excited about this announcement. To reiterate, no, you had nothing to do with this being our 20th episode and deciding that we needed to kind of take a step away too. But this is just encouraging because it's exactly what we were saying. We want other fans to pick up the reins. We want to get that, we want people to have the accessibility, and the fact that you get to do this, I think that's going to be just a stellar show. I can't wait to hear your first episode. I can't wait to hear your second episode. I definitely understand, time conflicts and everything, but I am definitely going to be, an avid listener.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I've got 2 confirmed co-hosts already, although I'm not ready to announce them
Awesome.
yet, just in case something happens. I'm looking for a couple more, and other fans will be welcome to come on and discuss episodes if they want to come on. And I just want to say this, you 2 are welcome on anytime you want.
Thank you.
That would be sweet.
We will take you up on that.
But like I said, it's Voices from the Eyrie, first episode, October 2019, second episode, whenever Spectacular Radio is over. I'm still trying to get Steve Blum on that one, and he's a hard to get, and you'll forgive me if I wait a little bit while trying to get him.
Definitely. Well, good luck with that too.
Thank you.
All right. Should we move on to our episode review?
I guess, we can.
Well, after that exciting news from Greg, let's move on to our episode review. We are going to finish Awakening. We decided to do both parts 4 and 5 today. We're still going to give them the love and the attention they deserve, but we wanted to make sure that we didn't stop in the middle of Awakening. So we are going to tackle both today, starting with Awakening Part 4. All right, well, we'll dive right in then to Act 1 of the 4th episode of Awakening. When we left off in Season 3, Goliath and Elisa had been jumped by the Commandos, also known as the Xanatos Goon Squad, informally. And I just want to say, like, I feel like I loved where they left it at that cliffhanger with Season 3, but or the episode 3, but I like that they picked it up right away in episode 4. They didn't leave you hanging. So we do start right away with Goliath and Elisa in the park. Goliath is still down. They have Elisa pinned, or they have her arms pinned so she can't get away, so it seems. Except, as we know, Elisa is not our damsel in distress. She very quickly shows off that she is one badass police detective, and she stomps on the foot of the commando holding her, does some of that self-defense training that I'm sure she's had, and she throws the leader and then she runs toward the other leader and knocks him over. Goliath is able to get up and fight off the other commandos. And then Goliath is actually able to get up and they run off. He's able to run up a small hill and glide just enough to get out of their way. I don't know. I really like that action sequence. So I don't know.
Also, the commandos being such bad shots makes sense when you find out they're not actually trying to kill him.
True. That's very true. And we don't know that yet, but it's true. They really do suffer from like bad guy aim syndrome. They can't aim, and it comes up later too, when they're following Elisa. They really can't seem to hit her either. But we'll get into that. One scene I do want to talk about, I still like how they portray the trio as the adventurers of the awakening. Goliath is getting the city in his own way. Hudson kind of takes it in by staying at the castle. He encounters the television and some of the other modern technologies, but I like that the trio is out exploring. We just have a very quick breakaway to the trio where they are eating, or they're gliding through the air. Broadway's eating like a pastry or a pretzel. I've never quite understood. I've seen both on like different sites, but he's eating something.
I think it was meant to be a pretzel because there's carts full of pretzels all over Manhattan, but it wasn't really drawn like one of them.
Yeah, it really looked like a big
bread.
Yeah, bread. I always thought it was a pretzel too, but like I said, I've seen pastries, so if I was wrong, I didn't want to be wrong on that. But he's very hastily eating one, and he tells Brooklyn he should have tried some. We get to see a little more of Brooklyn's sarcastic side when he mentions that he would have if Broadway hadn't eaten the whole cart full.
Do you think he did the garbage to find it? Because I'm sure he didn't buy it.
That's a good point. That I suppose it's a fall night. There might still be vendors out. Greg, how late do they tend to stay out?
Depends on the vendor. They make their own hours, and it's a city that never sleeps.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That's very true.
So maybe they gave a poor guy a heart attack, or maybe they dug them out of the dumpster. But either way, they are enjoying their snack. They land and they decide that, their wings are tired. Lexington mentions that first. Brooklyn agrees. They happen to look down into the street and they see a gentleman summoning a cab. So they have the idea to catch a cab themselves. And this is probably one of my favorite scenes with them, is when they jump out from the doorway and Brooklyn raises his arm and yells, "Yo, taxi," and the guy just peels around. I don't know. I just thought that was such a clever moment. It didn't distract from the storyline at all, and it really did become one of my favorite little parts in this sequence.
This scene was actually recreated at one of the early gatherings in Manhattan by a Brooklyn cosplayer.
Was it? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he went out into the street and did Yo Taxi, although apparently the taxi driver just ended up cursing him out instead.
No. Poor guy.
Welcome to Manhattan, Brooklyn. Welcome to Manhattan.
It would have been epic if the guy had actually spun the illegal Yui and driven away.
Yeah. There's a reason why we call the middle finger the New York salute.
Well, while they are walking back to the castle, we pan back to Goliath and Elisa. They stop to rest, and Goliath can't quite figure out why he feels so strange. It is because he's been pumped full of something. And then at that moment, she sees a small transmitter on his back. She lets Goliath know that that's how they found us. She explains what a radio transmitter is, and Goliath, still understandably in the Dark Age thinks it's some type of magic that led them to them. Elisa takes in the logo on the back. I I don't think she had time to like draw it at that time. She must have like photographic memory because she does have an image of it later.
Oh, it's a scarab. It's pretty memorable.
It's a scarab,
It is true. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of it too. But she puts it on a stray dog, and she says that they can chase Rover around the park for a while.
I hope Bruno adopted Rover.
I know, wouldn't that be amazing? Tell me if this is something you've heard too. I've heard that that Greg jokingly said that the dog in the park is the dog from the TV ad that Hudson sees later.
Yeah, the puppy from the TV ad grew up to be the dog in the park. How the mighty have fallen.
Right. I've heard that too. Is that actually something that he's actually said, or?
He actually said it. I don't know if he was joking or not, but why not?
Why not? Let's go with it.
Happens in Hollywood all the time.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, when I lived out in LA, I once met a homeless vagrant who could sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow better than Dorothy could.
Wow. I believe it, though. Hudson is back at the castle watching TV. He flips through a few channels. This is where we see said puppy commercial. If you look really fast, you can actually see a glimpse of the Lion King, which was popular at the time. And then he notices that the dawn is approaching. So he and Bronx go out to the turrets. The trio return, and they realize that Goliath has not returned yet. So they're feeling a little apprehensive. It pans back to Goliath and Elisa in the park. Goliath also notices the upcoming sunrise. He mumbles that it's too late, and Elisa doesn't quite understand his meaning, that he'll never make it back before sunrise. And she tries to get him to go. She tries to get him to continue, and she asks what happened at sunrise. He says, "You'll see," and Elisa turns her back, notices the commandos. By the time she turns again to Goliath, she's seen that he has turned to stone, ending Act 1. All right, then, jumping into Act 2, Elisa kind of tries to call to Goliath. This is something she's never seen before, so of course it's new to her. She doesn't quite understand what's happened, but she does understand the danger that they're in, and so she leads the commandos on a chase through the park. One of the things she runs by it is an Alice in Wonderland statue, and I've actually read that this was intentional, even though it is part of the park, which I think is very cool, but it's symbolic of her transition down the rabbit hole, so to speak.
Through the looking glass.
Through the looking glass.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Down the rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
Her life will never be the same.
Never.
No.
And for the better, really. Although she may not see it that way right now. But she runs into an outdoor cafe. She's trying to hide behind the tables. The commandos fan out and search for her. When one of them gets close enough, she trips him, knocks him down, and takes his gun, and then runs through the park again. And this, again, is where the bad guys suffer from that bad guy aim syndrome. They can't hit her, but she's able to get one of them. And then she runs into a boathouse, hides. She checks the gun and realizes it's empty. This is also a very cool scene. I know that it happens very quickly, but they start shooting at the boathouse. She runs into the water and she swims under the dock.
Two things to bring up over here. There's been a rumor going on in the fandom for years that Lisa said "damn" in the boathouse when the episode originally aired. That is not true. Greg has clarified many times that was not true. And for some reason, people still swear that they heard it.
I thought she said "out of ammo." That's all I ever heard her say.
Just empty, but yeah.
Empty, yeah.
And number 2, the commandos here, any other show would have had the commandos give up and go home thinking that they'd already taken care of her. Nope, they stopped to make sure.
Mm-hmm. And that's their mistake. But yeah, you're right. They would have stopped and had them just give up,
Okay, we got her. Exploded.
Yep. Done.
Actually, I think the VHS release did that edit.
Did they?
Yeah, they did.
Oh.
The Heroes Awaken VHS release from 1995, which trimmed this down to an 80-minute movie. Yeah, they just had the commandos say, "Well, that's that," and walk away. And then we cut to Elisa swimming in the lake, and then she's at Goliath's side again. The chase just stops.
I honestly don't remember that from the VHS. Now it makes me want to go back and revisit that because I'm so used to watching the DVDs now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's funny. All right. to-do list. Okay. Well, as Greg pointed out, it doesn't stop there. She swims under the dock. One of the commandos is checking to make sure they got her. The commando steps right where Elisa is hiding. Elisa grabs her, pulls her in the lake, and the chase continues again. Bruno, the lead commando, he chases after her, telling her it's over, trying to get her out of hiding by saying he admires her. He sees her jacket and thinks he has her, but she jumps out and knocks him over. She wipes her forehead and mentions that it's a lot to go through for a piece of lawn sculpture, and she heads back to Goliath. This is the first time they run into a recurring character, the jogger. He stops by the statue of Goliath. Elisa sitting next to the statue of Goliath. And he mentions that he's never noticed that statue before. And Elisa just kind of laughs and says the park is full of surprises.
Yeah, the jogger, the easiest cosplay for any gathering. No, people did it.
I believe it. I know it's sidetracking. Are there usually a lot of joggers, or is it just like one or two who took the quick way out?
Usually one or two.
One or two. Now, be honest, did they ever win any prizes?
No. I don't think they expected to.
I don't think so either. After the jogger runs off, the sun sets, Goliath awakens, and this is one of the most poignant scenes I feel in this entire arc, if not maybe even in the first or the first season. I can't even say my words. Words are hard some days, guys. But Goliath is very moved when he realizes that Elisa spent the whole day with him to protect him, and he mentions that she quite possibly saved his life. And there's just so much like depth in that sentence. It's a very simple sentence, but it just weighs so heavily on the friendship that's evolving.
Also, it's the old pact. The humans would watch them by day and they would watch humans by night, and she didn't even realize she was doing it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, Goliath then returns to the castle. He knows the others are worried about him. And Goliath fills them in. He tells them what happened in the park. And Xanatos is watching from his office. He has Owen summon Goliath into the... Oh, you know what? Before they get summoned, this is where we find out that Hudson, of course, we knew that Hudson had been named. This is where the others find out that Hudson adapted a name. And so they choose names that suit their new lives as well. Brooklyn, of course, becomes Brooklyn. Broadway chooses Broadway. Lexington becomes Lexington. And they name Bronx, of course.
I've got to say something here.
Yeah.
I don't think Bronx's reaction ever looked like he liked it.
No, never. I never.
No,
felt like
he's growing.
he just kind of grumbles and walks away. I also liked Lexington's comment. I don't know. It just seemed like it was such a perfect thing for him to say because I don't know. He's like, I think he just really wants that approval from Goliath. And so he's like, Lexington, do you like it? And, of course, they all agree that they're fine names. After they name Bronx, that's where Owen shows up and summons Goliath into Xanatos' office.
No, into the Great Hall, not his office.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I just reference it as the office. I know it's like the Great Hall in the Erie. Does he? Yeah, I suppose he never really calls it his office, does he?
There's a different room that's his office.
Oh, okay. That I didn't know.
We'll see it in an upcoming scene.
That's true.
With the big picture window behind him.
Right. No, I thought he was in his office. I'm sorry. Nope, that's cool. When he approaches Xanatos reveals an old acquaintance, and a side door opens to reveal.
Do we want to call her by her name here? Do we want to do that?
I don't know. I was so torn. That's what I was thinking too. I'm gonna call her the Angel of the Night. How about that?
Sure.
His second. I mean, we know who she is, but yep. It is revealed that his Angel of the Night is behind door number 1. And Goliath gasps when he sees her.
And yet he does not see the evil smirk on her face.
No, he doesn't.
No.
But they Starting Act 3, they do quickly embrace. Xanatos kind of smiles at their reunion. I don't think it's really a sincere kind of thing, but maybe there's like a little bit of a hopeless romantic in there. But he does say that he's very happy for both of them. The second, at this point, reminds Goliath that they owe their reunion to David Xanatos. I believe this is the first time we hear that his first name is David, too. The rest of the time he's been known as Mr. Xanatos or Xanatos.
Yeah.
Gives that contrast between, of course, the biblical sense of Goliath, David and Goliath.
Mm-hmm.
Goliath wants to know how it's possible. She gives him the version that, she feared for his safety and followed him that night. She lost her way and the sun rose before she returned to Castle Wyvern. She then goes on to further explain that the Magus had already turned the others to stone when she appeared at the castle, and she begged him to cast his spell on her as well so that she could awaken with the rest of the clan. Xanatos furthers the story by saying that he saw her a year ago, acquired her for his private collection. After the other gargoyles woke up, he thought that maybe a trip to the castle would have the same effect on her.
It's elegant bullshit.
Right?
Basically.
Goliath, of course, is overjoyed to see her. He doesn't think anything about that, and he goes with it, and they walk out to the tower where the others are waiting.
Actually, it's like he had her statue in his country mansion, something like that, because he's living in this castle, so...
Right.
There's something fishy here.
The blinders. Sometimes you put the blinders on.
Yeah.
If you watch, I don't know if it's still out there, but it used to be Gargoyles Abridged on YouTube, which is a really hilarious. When Goliath asks how is it possible that she's back, she responds, "Would you believe in the power of love?" And yes. Okay, then it was that.
It was that. Yep. Have you ever seen that, Carell?
No, I didn't. Maybe you can send me the link later.
Yeah, it's super funny.
Yeah, one of them had the sound completely muted, but I actually pulled all those at one point, so I've still got them.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, they are super funny.
Yeah, he made it to Temptation, but then I figure he probably didn't figure out a way to make Deadly Force funny.
And I think that would have been a hard one to tackle. He probably had the moral dilemma of, do I skip over it or create absolute blasphemy? I could talk about that show for for a whole nother podcast. Anyway, Demona, I'm sorry, the second asks Goliath for a favor, and with his blinders on, he agrees to anything. She mentions those stolen discs from episode 3, and she really wants help in retrieving them. She thinks that they should help Xanatos, if nothing else, out of gratitude for reuniting them. And Goliath agrees this time. He thinks that by doing so, it'll stop the humans that hunt them as well. He thinks that now with her by his side again, he is invincible. He can do anything. Demona is very happy with this turnaround of character. The gargoyles are brought back into the office where they watch the monitor to see the different defenses.
The living tapestry.
Yeah, the living tapestry. There are so many good remarks in here. Sometimes it's hard to know which ones to choose and which ones to skip over. But yeah, the living tapestry was pretty cool. So Xanatos explains each of them. He shows them an airship that hovers above the city or in a flying pattern. He shows them a tower in the middle of a bay, and then he shows them an underground base. Goliath determines that he and his love will take on the airship. The trio will do the tower, and Hudson will attack the underground base. Hudson wants to do it as a solo mission, but Goliath convinces him to take Bronx because Bronx needs the exercise. And so they take off. Goliath actually worries a little bit about the younger ones, and he comments to Demona about this. See, it's hard to do it. It's hard to do it now that we know her name. He comments to his second about this, but she reminds him that, even though they're young and impetuous, they're warriors, and they've been trained by the best.
Interjection. Sometimes I wonder. I know the second command takes part in the training. I wonder if she's giving herself credit there.
Credit too. Yep. I always felt like she was a little bit, especially because everything is going according to her plan right now.
Mm-hmm.
They are the first to approach their base. They approach the air fortress. A little side note here. I always remember watching this, and it just reminded me so much of like Batman, like the animated series. And then I was reading later that, of course, that made sense because Frank Parr worked on both of those series. But I loved how he designed that air fortress, and how the animators, brought it to life too.
The Air Fortress always reminded me of the Shield helicarrier from Marvel. I mean, which didn't really become famous pop culture-wise until much later, but it existed beforehand. I know Frank's and Greg are both comic book geeks enough to have been aware of it.
So they may have had some inspiration.
Oh, I'm sure.
I'm sure they did. They fight against the air currents from the rotors of the air fortress, and Goliath is able to tear through the bottom of the fortress so that they have an opening. Goliath mentions that the disc could be well guarded, and Demona makes a very upsetting comment to Goliath. She mentions that if humans wish to throw away their worthless lives, then that's their concern. But it definitely damages Goliath's blinders a little bit. But they continue on their mission. The two of them continue down through the ship. Understandably, or, no surprise, there are guards.
One of them is Vinny.
And this is our second meeting with Vinny. He's not named in either of these encounters, but he, of course, was the motorcyclist from the previous episode, and now he is at his security job, which he won't have for much longer. Poor Vinny.
Can't keep his job.
They think he's drunk. They take away his license. He can't keep his job.
No.
I should commission a figure of Vinny with Mr. Carter.
I want a Funko Pop of him, if nothing else.
With Mr. Carter.
What their name? Margot and
Brendan and Margot.
Yeah. That would be an inside joke.
And sadly, I kind of want the three thugs that always show up too. Come on, Funko, we're giving you ideas. Vinny and the unnamed guard attempt to stop Goliath and his love. They are unsuccessful. Vinny is rendered unconscious. Demona also defeats the other guard, and she is about to throw him out of the airship. Goliath won't allow this, and I'm so glad Goliath stayed with the morals. He tries to remind her that to kill in the heat of battle is one thing, but this isn't their way. This isn't what they do.
And I really respect that, because there are times when I find that in action shows with the heroes who don't kill, they get a little bit over moralistic about it. Because there are times, I mean, I don't mind if it's say Batman, who definitely has a code against that, and Spider-Man, but sometimes when they're out there in need of battle, things happen.
Yes, no, I agree with that. And surprisingly, she actually accepts it, and angrily, she tosses the guard away. She retorts that the sentries have made Goliath weak and walks off. Again, the blinder...
She threw him hard enough to break several bones.
That's true. That's true, she did. But Goliath still continues to follow her. And then we pan into the trio, Brooklyn, Lexington, and Broadway. They are approaching the tower. To me, it's funny that they're still taking in like the magic of the city and the sentry. They're about to go into battle, and they're still talking about how fantastic everything is and how exciting it is, and how new it is to them. And I don't know. I like that they have that approach without it distracting from the show again. The others agree with them, but they decide to get to their mission. Brooklyn looks for a way in. Broadway opens up like a steel door, a steel hatch, and tears it off its hinges. They climb down, and they're going to take the elevator, but it's a little different than the elevators that they're used to. They know they have to go 4 floors down, but Broadway kind of takes a peek down, and he comments that it's not like the elevators back at the castle. And the reason is they didn't push the button, they just jarred the doors open. Lexington says that there's not enough room to glide down, and Brooklyn decides to use the rope in the middle. They start to slide down the 4 floors, and Brooklyn is counting as they go. They pry the door open. Broadway says how easy it was, and he's hoping that they'll have the disc and be home in time for supper. As Brooklyn pries that door open finally, we see many, many armed guards, and Broadway corrects himself by saying a late supper. And that is the end of episode 4.
Uh-huh.
So why were there so many soldiers?
Security,
that they
security cameras.
security
I was
breach?
gonna say security cameras, maybe it even triggered an alarm when they pried the door off the hinges. I guess
Both.
all of the above. Yeah, and that would make sense, just because the Air Fortress wouldn't have had that kind of technology. They wouldn't have expected anyone to really be up there getting into the Air Fortress.
They would try to attack every station. Makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. I will admit these 3 bases are the most comic bookish part of the entire thing, but that's okay.
Kind of.
That's the world takes place in. We're gonna get cyborgs later.
Right. So we'll go into episode 5. Any comments before I begin, or other comments?
No?
Okay.
No,
I'm
not at the
good.
moment.
Okay.
I'll hold off till after.
All right. So Awakening Part 5. So we pick up exactly where we left off, just like with episode 4. We see the guards taking aim at Brooklyn, Lexington, and Broadway. They're still in the elevator shaft. Brooklyn kind of gives them this like sheepish grin, shrugs, and was like, sorry, wrong floor. And they climb up to the next floor. Broadway opens the elevator door. The 3 of them dive in as the guards fire up the elevator shaft. And so now they need a plan. So on the 4th floor, the scientists are listening to the alarms. They're watching the door. And the 3 of them have the plan to break in through the ceiling instead. They dig through the floor that they climbed up to. The lights go out, and the 3 of them drop in.
I love the 80s computers in the room.
I love that Lexington knows how to type on it and can actually get the disc to eject.
He's a savant.
He is, totally. But they are able to recover the discs. Brooklyn kind of picks up a scientist, asks him where it is. The scientist points to it.
I bet that scientist will later join the Quarrymen.
I never thought about that. Probably. The guards are trying to come in while Lexington is tapping at the computer. Brooklyn blocks the door, announces it's time to go. Broadway picks up a large piece of equipment and throws it through a window.
What that was a computer, and since it's 1994, that's probably a 2 gigabyte computer. My cell phone is more powerful than that.
And the 3 of them fly off. And they kind of celebrate. Lexington yells, "We did it!" And they go back to the castle. They are the first to return. So the underground base is where we're going next. Hudson and Bronx are approaching it. A guard actually reports to his commander that one of the stations has been breached. The commander wants details, but they don't have much, just something about monsters. But Hudson is wondering how he got talked into this outside. He spots a video camera, and the door opens. Because they see him on the monitor. I like this line too, because I sometimes feel like Hudson has some of the best quips, but you don't see him as often in the show. The guard asks Hudson, he says he doesn't know what Hudson is, but he's betting he's not bulletproof. And Hudson responds with, that's a wager you'd win.
Oh,
And
so you can tell they're establishing the rules here so that the audience doesn't think that they are.
Say that again?
You can tell that they're establishing the rules here so that the audience doesn't believe that they are bulletproof.
Right. That's true. Hudson is brought inside with the guards, but they weren't counting on Bronx. Bronx jumps in from behind. He and Hudson fight off the guards. Hudson he approaches the console and he's trying to get the disc. He doesn't really understand it. He's definitely not savant like Lexington, and he just punches it in frustration, and the disc pops out. Hudson grabs it. He and Bronx make their exit out of the base, but the fight isn't over yet. Hudson has to keep going. He's getting too old for this, he feels. But they hear more guards coming down a tunnel, and Hudson knows that he needs to find a way to escape.
Was it before or after Lethal Weapon?
Oh.
No, I'm too old for this BS. Or I don't know the English version.
When he leapt out and the doors closed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, I'll be honest. We could look it up.
Oh, the first one is from 1987.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So it may be like a reference. I mean, Edson is kind of the same character. Like I don't remember his name in the film.
Murtaugh.
Murtaugh, yeah, that's right. Well, that was a digression. Sorry.
So maybe they're paying a bit of an homage to that.
Maybe.
But yeah, so Hudson knows that they need to escape. And since they're underground, of course, it's nearest the subway. And a train happens to come by. So Hudson is able to rip part of a caged grate off it's almost like a catwalk. They jump onto the subway train, and they continue to escape. And then they also return to the castle.
And Hudson hopes that wee thing is worth the pains he'll be feeling later. Too bad he doesn't realize he grabbed the wrong disc and swiped some employee's Power Ranger fan fiction.
He'll really be regretting that later.
Sorry, I had to take one shot at it.
And then we're going to return to the airship. On that station, the commander receives a message that the other two have been breached and that they've lost 2/3 of their data. At that time, Goliath kicks in the door, and Demona announces that they've lost it all. Goliath takes on the guards, and Demona is the one who is able to retrieve the disc this time.
Almost like she's used a computer before.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. We're not supposed to know that, but it's pretty clear that she's comfortable with technology at this point. But unlike the others, Hudson didn't purposely cause damage. Lexington knew exactly what he was doing. Demona reaches into the console and pulls out a cable, and she holds it up to the rest of the console, and it starts on fire. Goliath can't believe that she did this, and he questions her. All she does is kick open a door to escape and tells him that they need to hurry. Goliath wants to stay and help, and Demona drags him out of the opening. They manage to get away just as the engines explode and the airship crashes down into the river. Unbeknownst to them, Elisa happened to be pulling up at that time, and she saw Goliath and Demona flying away. And she even says she recognizes Goliath.
And can I say something? The show kind of glosses over this, but people had to die there. The bridge they were in was on the underside of that airship. They couldn't have gotten out. Those people drowned as soon as they hit the river.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we know a few people got out, but there's no way everybody got out. There's just no way. It's impossible.
Nope. When Bennett and I were watching, though, I did let him know that everyone was okay. I felt that was okay at that moment.
I guess he's not ready to know that Demona's a mass murderer.
He very much identifies her as the bad guy, but I figure at age 5, it's okay to feel there's lots of good in the world still.
Of course, definitely.
But he does know that she's the bad guy.
Has he seen City of Stone yet? It's hard to gloss over it there.
No, that was one he didn't ask to watch. We watched The Gathering instead, so after Awakening.
Yeah, City of Stone and Hunter's Moon are the darkest of the series.
Right. Nope. I was okay with glossing over those at this point. I figure eventually we're going to watch all of them, and then we'll have some good talks.
Good. But yeah, she totally killed people there.
Oh,
a lot of people.
Absolutely.
With a big grin on her face when she was doing it.
Yes, I was just going to say that without any remorse whatsoever.
She was enjoying it.
Yeah.
Well, in City of Stone, she was quipping and laughing about it as she did it.
True.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and let's talk about this. This is a character on a so-called kids show who is a mass murderer, and while they may not necessarily dwell on it, they don't sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, a far cry from, say, what was on at the time? Oh yeah, Spider-Man the animated series, when they brought in Carnage, who in the comics is a serial killer, but they didn't even mention that at all, and he would just suck people's souls out instead of killing them. I'm not kidding, it was really stupid.
Yeah, I always felt she was one of those characters, if you were old enough to understand what she was doing, like it was horrifying, and then if you were young, like I'll use my son as an example, he just recognizes that she's the bad guy, but he doesn't understand the extent of it. And it is interesting that they were able to put her on a quote unquote kid show and get away with the level of her character.
Yeah, that's what Greg calls writing on multiple levels.
And so ends our first act. Goliath and his love return to the castle. They deliver their disc to Xanatos. He thanks them and says that the information on the disc will be put to good use for all humans and for gargoyles alike.
And what we get next, this argument is a major turning point.
And Greg is right. So Goliath mentions that he is going to meet a friend.
I guarantee you that if Damona had not behaved like that on the airship, he would not have gone off to meet Elisa. He would have been somewhere cuddling with her instead.
Right. But yeah, the blinders are off at this point. True love doesn't solve everything, unabridged. And Damona is very upset by this as well, because she knows it's not another gargoyle, and she tries to convince Goliath that Xanatos is the only human friend they need.
And what's funny about that is that she doesn't trust him either. They're using each other. They both know that they're using each other, and she knows Xanatos is screwing them over, so she can't argue against what Goliath is saying. And also the fact that it's a human. I mean, like Greg said in the commentary, Goliath won't be burying this relationship until the end of vows, but for her, this is a cutoff. She's done. It's over for them.
Mm-hmm.
That was a fun 3-hour reunion for her then, I guess. If that.
But yeah, they quarrel, and I like that Goliath does the one thing he never usually does, and that's he brings her words back to her. When she says that, he said that, or that she said he has become weak, he says that she feels that she's become hard and unforgiving, and she's totally different than how he remembers her. And like you said, Greg, I think this is the moment where he's like, we need to be done, even though it takes him a while to kind of...
Not for him, it's for her.
For her, yeah.
Not for him, not yet. He waits until vows for that.
For vows, okay. But he does choose to go meet Elisa.
At that point, just to get away from it all. I mean... He wasn't thinking of a breakup yet, or at all.
No, but he did want to go meet her.
Yeah, I mean, they tend to mate for life, so that's the idea of quote unquote divorce is just alien to them. And also keep in mind, her memories of him are 1,000 years old. His are, from his perspective, maybe only a few days old.
A few days old, right. Elisa is waiting for Goliath. She asks where he's been. He's pretty vague on the details. He wants to know why. But she tells him about the cyberbiotics, that all 3 of the stations were robbed, and that she saw him flying away from the air fortress. He does confess that they returned the disc, or they took the disc back for Xanatos. And this is where Elisa reveals that the robotics firm belongs to Xanatos.
The Scarab one, yeah. The Scarab.
The Scarab one. Yep. I was getting to that.
Yeah, I've seen people get confused by this dialogue because they would interpret it as people saying that Xanatos owns cyberbiotics, which he does, and he just owned the commandos, which chased them.
Right. Yep, he owns the commandos, and he owns the Scarab Corporation.
Yeah, even though it's called the Scarab Corporation in the series Bible, I don't think we get that name officially in canon until the comic book.
Until the comic books. No, I think the only time I actually saw that it had the name was either something in Station 8, or maybe it was truly the Garg Wiki. But yeah, I've never heard it actually referenced until the comics. But Goliath is understandably confused too. Elisa explains the situation, and that she says that she thinks Xanatos even planted the bug or the radio transmitter on him himself. She says she checked, nothing was stolen. The discs were actually Cyberbiotics property. And she further explains that he used Goliath and the clan, and he's been using them since the beginning. Another very poignant scene, he turns away and she pulls him back, and she has her hands on his face, which I know is more of a gesture in gargoyle romance, I suppose. It's a very tender movement, and she didn't know that. But she gets him to face her, and she says that he has no good reason to trust any humans, but she thinks that he'd be better off trusting her than Xanatos. Goliath crumples up the paper, and Elisa says that he won't regret it. Back at the castle, we start to see more about what Xanatos is up to. He's standing next to some covered up figures, and he feels that the gargoyles have really outlived their usefulness. He realizes he can't control them the way he thought he maybe could, and he doesn't really know what to do with them at this point. But with the data on the discs, he feels that he can move forward. And he mentions something about replacements. Owen says that they only need to wait a little longer until dawn approaches or dawn happens, and then they can test the replacements then. Demona...
Just a question. Yeah. So he needed the cyberbiotic data for the Steel Clan?
Yeah, he needed...
That's what it means.
I think to finally bring them online, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they were the final component to it.
Probably software.
Yeah. Our second in command steps out of the shadows and says that the replacement should be tested now. They share a little evil smirk.
Just want to say I love the animation in that scene, the lighting, the shadows, the character acting. It's really good.
Mm-hmm. So we cut away to the castle, or the top of the castle on a tower. The trio are relaxing. Lexington has a laptop computer. Broadway is eating, and Brooklyn has a pair of sunglasses.
At night.
At night, yep. They're commenting, that they think they're really going to like this world. Broadway agrees, and then there's a laser blast. It knocks the food right out of Broadway's hand. It incinerates the box, really, and they all turn to see...
Those poor dumplings.
Right? They didn't deserve that. But they turn to see Xanatos, Owen, the second in command, and the robotic versions of Goliath. So they are going to encounter the Steel Clan. And so Broadway kind of questions what they are. Before the others can answer, the battle's on. The three of them scatter around. One of the blasts catches Broadway, and he falls to the ground unconscious. I think it's because he hit into the side of the tower.
Mm-hmm. And he's falling from the tower.
Yep. And so the impact knocks him out. And Xanatos kind of explains a little bit about the Steel Clan. He takes that moment to explain what they are. He talks about how they're superior because they can fly, they don't need to sleep, and they're 100% obedient.
Obedient.
Yep.
He likes obedience.
Yes. Which
most businessmen do. I mean,
right.
I mean, you never know. I mean, what if you're a businessman, you get elected president, you demand 100% obedience and loyalty from people, and no, that can never happen in real life.
Never happen.
Oh, good God. You don't have to edit that part out.
Okay.
One of the robots also takes aim at Lexington.
Low energy Lexington.
Right.
No more of that.
I was gonna say it.
He's not invited.
It catches him in the wing and gets him, I guess. He starts to fall. Brooklyn catches him. And there's a robot that's going to aim at Brooklyn and Lexington. Just as that robot is about to fire, Goliath appears on the scene, and he smashes it into one of the castle walls. Goliath takes Lexington, lands next to Broadway, sets Lexington down next to Broadway, and then rejoins the fight. And I thought this was very strategic of Brooklyn. I know we're not supposed to really see a lot of his mind until a little later in the show, but he takes the opportunity to, instead of going full force at the Steel Clan, he plans like this attack. He swoops down and he climbs up the building so that the robots don't see him. And I thought that was a really clever way to like get past them, and then he's able to rejoin Goliath. While he's doing that, Hudson and Bronx run out of the castle and they join the fray as well.
And they really kick ass scene where Bronx brings down a robot and then Hudson slices it in half.
Yeah, and you almost see it from like the robot's point of view. You know, you see Hudson coming toward with the sword, and then it doesn't stop until Hudson has sliced it, and then you see Hudson with the robot. But yeah, that was like brilliant animation. I mean, the whole sequence is, the whole show is.
Mm-hmm.
Elisa enters the building. She just runs past the security guard and flashes her badge. I really felt this should have been Vinny too, but you know, he can't be everywhere. But the security guard just lets her through.
That guy should get fired. I mean, Elisa, who do you think you are? You think your badge is a magic key to everyone's house? Warrant, Elisa.
He didn't even get a chance to really look at it. He was just like, whatever, ma'am, go through. Like I said, it would have been priceless if that had been Vinny too, but he can't be everywhere. He got out of the air fortress. We know that much. Goliath defeats the robots. At this point, you know, Xanatos and Owen and his love are kind of running from the debris. Xanatos admits that maybe it's not the perfect plan, and all the robots are then destroyed. The clan gathers around thinking they've won, and our beloved second in command appears and announces they haven't, and she's holding a rocket launcher.
On the first day of Christmas, Demona gave to me a fully armed and loaded RPG. And Xanatos holds a weapon on the other. Demona fires the rocket at Brooklyn and Goliath, who have reassembled up on the turret. They're not really able to dodge Goliath. More or less Brooklyn is blown down below with the rest. Goliath questions this action, and Demona reveals a bit. She talks about how foolish he was, how he didn't take the clan from Castle Wyvern. Of course, Goliath is hurt by this. Her bargain with the captain.
Yep, her bargain with the captain. She reveals her betrayal.
So basically, this is all her fault.
Right, but it's not her fault in her mind. It's Goliath's and everybody else's, and definitely not her fault.
Definitely not.
Definitely not.
There's a Homer Simpson clip that I will always think of here. This is everybody's fault but mine.
And it's true. She does plead to Goliath, though, to join her again in the battle against humanity, and he refuses. And so she declares him her enemy. And with that, she fires the rocket at Goliath. He dodges it, but he's still kind of thrown to the floor by the impact.
What she is using here is a weapon designed to blow up tanks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she switches to the particle beam weapon in later appearances, but this was just, okay, overkill.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, actually. But yeah, it makes me wonder how she got it. Like, is it something she acquired in the past, or is it something maybe Xanatos?
I would assume it came from Xanatos.
You think so? All right. Well, Goliath is laying there, and this is where she finally reveals her name. I know we've said it throughout the podcast, but she says that she has a name too, and that the humans gave it to her long ago, which to me is a big crack in her story that she told him earlier. But you know, he's got a lot going on. I don't think he really catches that. But she does reveal that she is Demona.
She hasn't been sleeping like she said before.
Right.
We don't get confirmation of that until Temptation, but that's a big clue.
No. But there's an innuendo, like, if the humans didn't call her a demona when they were, like, awakened, it's after, so she was there, so...
Yep, exactly. I mean, it was a huge indication. I know at that time, watching it for the first time, I caught it.
I didn't pay
pay
attention
as much
either.
attention to it as I should have.
and then when her story was unfolding, it was like, whoa. But yeah, I mean, you catch it, but you maybe don't catch on to it as quickly as should have.
Yeah, you can read between the line afterwards.
Uh-huh.
She is about to take out Goliath with that rocket cannon, but she's tackled by Elisa. The rocket instead flies into a tower. A rock falling or a stone falling from that knocks out Xanatos, so he's out of the way now.
Fractured rib.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then another huge chunk of the battlement comes tumbling down, and it like crashes in front of Demona and Elisa, sending them to plummet to the street below. Goliath is faced with a choice here, and I don't really feel like he hesitates. He swoops down, he catches Elisa, and then does realize he cannot catch Demona, and she's just falling out of sight. So he grabs Xanatos, who's barely conscious, probably has that fractured rib that Grape mentioned, and he's about to throw Xanatos off the side, saying that she wanted him to destroy humanity. He'll start with him.
And Xanatos just mocks him for it.
Really, he does, yeah. Elisa stops him, and Goliath throws Xanatos into the stairs in front of Elisa and Hudson. Everyone takes their place to sleep. Brooklyn's poor night sunglasses break, but Elisa and Goliath are talking up above, and Elisa promises that she'll always be Goliath's friend. Goliath agrees to meet her the same time tomorrow, and Elisa kind of takes a little jab and says maybe we'll catch a Giants game just as the sun goes up. And Elisa kind of... Yeah,
Giants? You have giants?
Elisa kind of snickers and wonders if the city is ready for them. And the scene ends. So there we have Awakening. Yay!
I would like to start out by saying that pilots are hard. I see a lot of shows do pilots. Some of them introduce too much, or too little. They bog you down in too much exposition, or they don't explain enough. Disney had a pretty good track record with pilots. I remember DuckTales had a 5-part pilot. Yep. Rescue Rangers had a 5-part pilot. Tailspin 4 episodes. Darkwing 2 episodes. But this afternoon did well with pilots, and I think with all 5 parts of Awakening, they did just enough. They explored the concept enough to hook people. They didn't bog you down in exposition. They didn't feel they needed to answer all the questions right away. Things could be revealed later as well. And at the same time, it also, if this had been a 5-part miniseries all by itself, I would have been satisfied. I'm not saying I'm glad that I wish it was. I'm glad it wasn't. I'm glad there was way more to it. But it was so self-contained that it worked by itself as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have an introduction, some action, and a conclusion of. You could have just like finished with the 5 parts, and it was well rounded.
Yep, I remember when they always did a teaser, and they always played the pilot almost as like a movie, and they did that with quite a few of the Disney shows. But I remember when they did it with the Awakening arc. And it was just like an 1.5-hour movie that they played on like a random Sunday or something like that.
I remember that also. Greg said he has no idea who did that cut. It's a different cut than the VHS cut.
Yes. Yep, it was totally different. And I remember being like incredibly satisfied just with the arc, and I am so grateful that we got the number of episodes we did, because if we had to walk away just from this, I mean, there would have been a lot of unanswered questions, but I still felt like I would have seen something great. So
well, I feel like the biggest unanswered question would have been what happens next. I mean, obviously, while there are holes in Demona's story, there aren't enough holes there to make it feel like it was a complete lie yet.
Yeah.
But it isn't a temptation that we really find out that her story wasn't true. Also, I have to comment on the animation. The animation is masterful. I've never seen New York City better depicted in an animated TV show. I mean, Frank Park told a story, which I think Carell, you asked him a question. He mentioned he walked up and down the avenues taking pictures. He wanted it to look authentic. Mm-hmm. And that hard work paid off. I mean, I remember once seeing a American cartoon where Times Square was next to the World Trade Center, which anyone who knows is complete BS. It's like 3 miles away.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of cartoons take place in New York, but very few of them feel like New York. This does.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, Corral, you can back me up on that. You've been there.
Yeah. I had definitely a sense of like knowing New York. Aside that you can see New York in a lot of TV series and things like that. But like I remember like looking upwards at the buildings at night next to Central Park. I was like watching the part when Eliza was watching the two silhouettes of the gargoyles like flying away, and I remember that I also looked above and hoping to see something something like that, but you can feel like it was kind of the same feeling. Yeah, definitely.
The only other superhero series I can think of that feels quintessentially New York is, I'm not talking about just the show itself, but Spider-Man, because Spider-Man is so very New York City-ish. I mean, those two franchises really captured the heart of it. Granted, Spider-Man always took place in New York. It was Stan Lee. It was created by a New Yorker, and Greg and Frank are not New Yorkers, but they did their homework.
Yeah, they did.
I mean, Greg's from LA. I'm not sure where Frank is from, but
the other TV show that I remember like gave me like this sense of New York actually was the 10th Kingdom. Like the first part of the TV series is placed in New York.
Oh, sure.
And I remember that there is a lot of things happening in Central Park as well. And I think that's when I was in New York, I was like in the middle of the 10th Kingdom and Gargoyles.
Yeah, I went to New York when I was in early college, and I felt like, even though I could never tell you I could navigate around the city, I feel like I had a really great sense of it just from the show.
In a way, Manhattan itself is a character.
It really is. It's a very accurate way to describe it.
And like I said, it stands on its own. It's got a great hero. It's got a great supporting cast. It's got terrific villains. What more can you ask for?
I agree.
I like how they depicted like Manhattan very colorful, even it's at night, because you have all the lights, of course, but it's not like everything dark, and you have sense of yellows and reds, and it can be very colorful even if it's at night.
Yeah. Well, you know why?
Yeah.
Well, you know why Greg and Frank did that, because night is when these characters are alive. They wanted it to be colorful and full of life. Not like Batman animated series or Gotham City is basically a graveyard at night.
Yeah.
I mean, the art had to reflect the mood and reflect the characters of the series. I mean, they said Batman's dark blacks and grays and browns. They work for him because he's a very grim character. But this show, I mean, I know people compare it to Batman animated series all the time. It's really not. I mean, it's got it's a much more optimistic series, with a much more optimistic protagonist. So when people say that Gargoyles is dark, I fundamentally disagree with them. I mean, dark things happen, but it's not fundamentally a dark show.
Well,
yeah, the message is still positive.
Yep, I was going to say, I always feel like they hold on to hope. It never falters.
Yeah, that's true.
I agree completely.
But yeah, the animation is beautiful. You have I remember accurately like some piece of animation that's like was very, very authentic. Like when I think I talked about that like in one of our previous shows, that you know, the moment when Eliza is inside the boat shack and she's looking at her gun and it's empty, like she has something on her face, like an expression that is so authentic. I think it's one of this moment like, oh, I won't do that. I won't do that for a living.
I've always said that too. I always feel like, you know, Gargoyles came on kind of at a time in my life where I could have like not been interested in cartoons anymore, and it came on at just that right moment. Like everything those characters felt, I felt like I was feeling, you know, but the animation is truly what drew me in as well. And it was just, they're so spot on in the expressions and in the, not even so much from like an aesthetic part where I'm thinking about where the buildings are placed, because I don't know the city that well. You know, you could put something next to something and I may or may not know that that's true. But the design of the show and the design of the characters, it just brought it to life so much.
Can't argue with that.
Well, I don't know if we have anything else to add. It's just such a brilliant series.
Yeah.
It is definitely worth talking about for another 25 years.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'll lead the charge with my kid.
Well, I intend to help out a little bit. We'll be back in a
Yes.
few months with voices from the ERE, and we'll go from there, and we'll see what happens.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the
Well-
last word should be both of yours.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was gonna say we should probably, just say thank you. Thank you to everyone who listened to
Yeah.
us and gave us a chance and brought us into your homes on your computers or your phones or however you listen to podcasts.
And for all the messages that we received.
Yes,
And yeah, it was a fantastic experience for both of us. I think I can speak for you and me.
absolutely.
But I really never have regretted to get into this project, and I feel kind of it's so hard.
It is, I know.
Oh gosh.
No, I feel, our show has been so funny because it's had its ups, it's had its definite downs, but I feel like we always held on to the hope, Carell. Like I feel like we knew
Yeah.
that we can make it into something, and I feel like we have.
Yeah.
And
I'm happy and proud of what we've done.
me
Yeah.
too. And I feel like I have a lifelong friend in you, which, maybe that wouldn't have happened in another setting. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe not. But it's something I liked about it.
Yep.
Like, yeah.
Carell and I barely knew each other, and we went to the Convergence together,
Convergence,
which
yes,
was awesome.
yes.
And we met Greg there. We met so many fantastic people, and
Mhm.
I hope that gets another shot too. I hope they have like another Convergence to celebrate the Gargoyles again.
Mhm. Yeah.
I haven't heard about anything happening this year, and I think we would have by this point, so it's a bit late.
Yeah.
But you never know. I mean, hopefully we'll get together before the 30th anniversary.
Yes,
I hope so.
I hope so.
For that, I will definitely put some money aside to go sometime. Yeah.
Yes.
And
Even if we share a hotel room again, Carell.
Mhm.
I just want to say I am 100% certain that you'll both be heard on the Gargoyles podcast again. I am 100% certain about that.
I would love
I
that.
would love it.
Like I can't stop talking about gargoyles anytime. So, so yeah, it's hard, but I think it's the end.
I think so. Thank you again for all your support. We're still going to be online. Feel free to reach out to us at any time.
And
Carell
maybe I
is-
think we didn't talk about it, but the website will be still on for like 1 year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
We are still paying until like I think it's May 2020.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, we'll manage to have like the MP3 places elsewhere. But I think we will talk about that on the DeviantArt group or the Facebook group as well.
Mm-hmm.
But you can still like watch or listen to the former episodes like on our YouTube channel. It's well, you can look for the Gargoyles Reawakening podcast and you can find us.
Yes. Yep. And still, we'll have the Facebook group too. We'll have the DeviantArt group up still, because we still want to share fan art, and if you post fan fiction, we'll
Yeah.
put that up there too, gladly.
Yeah, they won't be closed there.
No, they won't. All right. Well,
Yeah.
a big thank you to Greg for all of
Thank
your
you.
appearances and help on our shows. You've really made
Okay.
them memorable.
Thank you so much, Greg. Yeah, you've been wonderful.
I've been okay. You've been wonderful.
No, it's you.
All right. Well, thank you again, and have a wonderful day. We will catch you guys on the flip side, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.